In 2014, a man named Ronald Read died in Vermont at the age of 92, and when they read his will, the whole town went quiet because this man left behind $8 million. Here's the part that doesn't make sense. Ronald Read pumped gas at a filling station for 25 years. Then he swept floors as a janitor at a JCPenney. He drove a secondhand car. He held his coat together with a safety pin. His own neighbors thought he was broke. So how does a janitor die a multi-millionaire? Not the lottery, not an inheritance. He grew up on a farm with nothing. Not some genius startup. He did one quiet thing for 60 years that almost nobody around him was doing. And it's the exact thing school had 12 years to teach you and never once mentioned. Most people assume the lesson school skipped is budgeting. Spreadsheets, skip the latte. It's not. That's the lesson they let you have. The one they left out is what Ronald Read knew. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It doesn't take a big salary. It starts with about $100.
Here's what school quietly trained you to do. Get good grades, get a job, trade your hours for dollars, repeat until you're old. Look closely at that loop, because there's a trap hidden inside it. Every dollar you earn comes from you, your time, your energy, your Monday mornings, which sounds normal until you remember the one thing nobody mentions. You are going to run out of hours. You get maybe 80,000 working hours in an entire life, and then they're gone. You can't make more. The richest person on earth has the same 24 hours you do. And here's the quiet insult inside the deal. When you work a job, economists have a name for what you're actually worth. It's the value you produce. Produce $100 an hour of value, and you might take home 25 of it. The rest is profit for the person who owns the business. That's not a scandal. That's just the machine. You are renting yourself out by the hour at a markdown. So the real lesson isn't work harder. It's this. School made you excellent at making money for someone else, and it never showed you how to make money work for you. You learned to sell your time. You never learned to own. That's the whole game, and almost nobody is playing it.
And you can see it right there in the numbers. Today, the richest 10% of American households own around 90% of all the stock. The bottom half of the country owns about 1%. Same economy, same rising market. One group owns the machine, the other group is the machine. It's not that regular people can't get in. Most technically do. Around 6 in 10 adults own some stock, usually through a retirement account they forgot they have. The gap isn't in whether you own. It's in how early, how much, and how deliberately. Because here's where the two sides quietly split apart. The Federal Reserve tracks what the typical American household is actually worth. Under the age of 35, the median net worth is about $39,000. And more than a third of adults say they couldn't cover a surprise $400 bill with cash. They'd have to borrow it. Now hold that next to Ronald Read, a janitor, no degree. And he died owning a piece of 95 different companies. Same country, opposite ledger. The difference was never the size of the paycheck. It was which side of the machine he stood on.
So what did Ronald Read actually do? Nothing clever. He bought small pieces of good businesses. And then he did the one thing almost no one can stand to do. He waited for decades. Here's the word school skipped: compounding. Your money earns a little, then that little bit also starts earning. Then that earns. It's a snowball. One push at the top of the hill, and it grows on its own. Bigger every single year, without you touching it. Watch what time does to that snowball. Put in $100 a month. Not a fortune. The price of a gym membership you don't use. And let's be conservative and say it grows at 8% a year. That's actually below the stock market's long-run average of about 10. Start at 25. And by 65, that $100 a month becomes roughly $350,000, even though you only put in about $48,000 of your own money, but wait 10 years. Start at 35 instead. Same $100 a month, and you land at about $150,000. Read that again. A 10-year delay didn't cost you 10 years of deposits. It cost you around $200,000, even though you only skipped about $1,200 of actual saving. The lever was never the amount. It was time, and time is the one thing an 18-year-old has more of than a millionaire, and the one thing school never told them was ticking. That's what Ronald Read had that his neighbors didn't. Not money, 60 uninterrupted years of snowball.
Now, the snowball rolls both ways, because the exact same force can run in reverse, and school skipped that too.
Put $5,000 on a credit card at around 20% interest, pay only the minimum, and that $5,000 can quietly cost you over $15,000 and take you 30 years to escape. Same math, pointed at your throat instead of your future. That's the leaky bucket. You can pour in every raise, every side hustle, every "I'll save this month." But if there's a 20% hole in the bottom, the bucket never fills. It's why people earning good money still feel broke. The system taught you to keep pouring. It never mentioned the hole. So step 1 is plug the hole. Step 2 is build the snowball. Because your money never sits still. It's either compounding for you or compounding against you.
Once you see this, you can't switch it off. You start noticing it everywhere. The rent you pay is your landlord's income. Think about that. If you rent, your landlord works maybe a few hours a year to collect what takes you 40 hours a week to hand over. The renter pays the owner. The borrower pays the lender. The employee makes the employer rich. That's not bad luck. That is the actual blueprint of the whole system. Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men who ever lived, supposedly said that 90% of millionaires got there through owning things. Not earning wages, owning, not earning, which leaves you with a slightly uncomfortable truth. At every moment, you are either buying ownership or paying someone who already did. There isn't a third option, and school spent 12 years preparing you for exactly one side of that sentence. There's a specific moment where everything quietly changes. It's the first time your money's own earnings cover a real bill by themselves. Your phone, your groceries, a car payment, without you lifting a finger. The first time your snowball pays for something instead of you. That's the door. Everything before it feels like running uphill. Everything after it starts to feel like the wind is finally at your back. And if nobody ever pointed at that door for you, that is not a you problem. You weren't handed a broken brain. You were handed half the rules. It's not that you're bad with money. It's that nobody ever showed you the door was there, which raises the real question, the one that actually stings.
If this lesson is this simple and this powerful, why did school leave it out? And the honest answer isn't a villain in a boardroom. It's quieter and a little more uncomfortable than that. Go back to where our schools came from. The model most of the world uses was borrowed in the 1840s from Prussia. And Prussia didn't design mass schooling to create free-thinking millionaires. It designed it to produce something the industrial age desperately needed. Millions of reliable, interchangeable workers. People who show up on time, who follow instructions, who sit in rows, respond to bells, and don't cause trouble. It was quite literally built to staff an economy. So ask yourself what a system like that has any reason to teach. To be a dependable employee, not to own the factory, to be reliable inside it. A machine built to produce workers was never going to hand out the manual for how to stop being one. Not out of evil, out of design. That's the lesson school left out. Not because someone locked it in a vault, because the system was never built to give it to you in the first place. It wasn't a gap in the curriculum. In a very quiet way, it was the curriculum.
So here's where it lands. There's exactly one line that separated Ronald Read from the millions who out-earned him and died with nothing. The line between renting your time and owning your future. And it turns out that's the only line that ever really mattered. You can't get those 12 school years back, but the snowball doesn't care when you start pushing, only that you do. And crossing that line is smaller than they made it sound. It isn't $1 million. It's your first $100 turned into a piece of something, a sliver of the whole market that goes to work the second you buy it and never clocks out. That's the entire secret a janitor used to outdie millionaires. He just started early and never stopped. So before this video ends, make it real. 1, this week, buy your first small fragment of ownership, even $100, so you've crossed that line once. 2, spend an hour with someone whose money life you'd actually want. 3, read a little every day about the game you were never taught. That's it.
Because 10 years from now, that $100 a month is either a snowball you finally started rolling or a leaky bucket you kept pouring into. Same you, same paycheck. The only difference is whether someone finally told you there was a choice. Nobody told Ronald Read. He figured it out with a janitor's wage and 60 years of patience. You just got told. That's the page they left out. Now it's yours.